Hello everyone. So in this video, I'll talk about Anaximander's cosmogony. Now, Anaximander's cosmogony, cosmogony of all these philosophers, as you notice, it's fun, but it's also the weirdest part of it because some of it is observation and a lot of it is imagination. But okay, let's look at Anaximander's cosmogony. So, what kind of questions is he asking? First, he's asking, how does the world order come into being? That's a basic question of cosmogony. And this we have already answered. We know the answer of how does it come into being? Basically, it's through a process of separating out caused by the eternal motion of the apeiron. And this eternal motion is the tricky part, right? Because then a lot of philosophers make millions of guesses on what is meant by this eternal motion. What Aristotle says is that the opposites are in the one, right? We read that section. The opposites are in the one, they are together, and then they are separated out by this eternal motion. Aristotle was not very happy with this explanation because he said that there is no efficient cause, right? There is nothing that explains, what originated this motion, who caused this motion. But with Anaximander, that question is not there. The apeiron already moves, right? It's a self-moving thing. It moves anyway. And if you think of it as an initial indeterminate fusion of all things which is constantly moving, then at some point something causes it to separate out. And with Anaximander, if you remember the one extant fragment, it's actually this notion of balance and retribution. Yeah, because they are, all one substance, but they are like, fighting. There's infighting going on. There's some polemos, there's some war going on, and one takes over the other, and the other is like, okay, I need retribution now, kind of a thing. So, if you start thinking of the birth of the cosmos for Anaximander, the idea is that first, and this is a description that we have from various people then finally, is that first there is a germ of hot and cold which separates out from the apeiron, right? It's hot and cold that separates out. So then there is this sphere of flame, right, which grows about the water surrounding the earth, and Anaximander uses this expression, and this turns up later as well, like a bark around a tree, right? It's strange, but like very cool idea that, you have like in that fused apeiron, you have this germ of hot and cold that fought with each other. Those two really don't get along, right? They separate out. And then out of this sphere, there is this flame that goes up, and it surrounds the central earth that sort of separates out from that. And this flame goes up like a bark around a tree. So you have a tree and you have the bark around the tree. So this flame goes up. And in fact, the earth in Anaximander's vision is cylindrical. It's very interesting. So it's a flat surface that floats, but it's cylindrical surface, right? So you have a circle, and then you have this cylinder, and then you have the circle at the bottom. And we live on top, of course. Yeah. And then when this was torn away, right, this bark around the tree, and shut off in certain rings, the sun, the moon, the stars came into existence. So what happened then? So actually the next one will explain it. The stars are wheel-shaped concentrations of mist filled with fire, breathing out flame through openings. And I'll try and make a diagram of this, otherwise it's going to be pretty tricky. But try and imagine this, that what you have then is, so there's the earth, there's a flame that separates out. In the middle you have all these mist, right? And this mist is this dark air. Remember that air we talked about, that air which is a dark mist, which surrounds the earth. And in that air, there are these little holes, which sort of, there are gaps in the air. And from these openings, you have this fire that is surrounding like a bark, that sort of, breathes out flames. And that breathing out of flames is, these are wheel-shaped concentration of that mist filled with fire. And that's how we have the sun and the stars and the moon and everything. The stars, what are the stars? The stars come into being as a circle of fire, separated off from the fire that pervades the cosmos and surrounded by mist. There are breathing places certain pipe-like passages. So in the mist, you have these pipe-like passages through which the stars appear. So there's this breathing out of fire through these pipe-like passages. And when these passages get blocked, you have eclipses. Yeah? I mean, a bit far out, but it is a sort of cosmological explanation different from what you'd find in Homer and Hesiod. Which is trying to come up with a physical explanation, and it's a very cool vision. You know, I don't know. I think I would like to sort of see some kind of animated representation. I'll look up if somebody has made it of Anaximander's cosmos, where you have all this, you know, like there is a fighting of opposites, and then flame comes out, and then you have the mist, and then you have these pipe-like passages from which fire is breathed in, and then things close up and cause eclipses. It's a fascinating vision, I think, of the cosmos. And so you have this sort of a vision of the birth of the cosmos, and then you have this idea of this eternal motion which causes this, you know, because otherwise there's no God, there is no sort of, you know, creator, there's nothing, you know, that is causing it apart from the fight of these opposites, right? It's what is the father of all and king of all, as Heraclitus says? It's polemos, it's war, right? It's in that sense, it's like the struggle for supremacy, which is causing, you know, one element to take over and all this strange cosmos to get created. And because it is eternally moving, it is eternally alive, and, you know, that's why it is divine in that sense. And because life, what is life? It's self-caused motion. You know, if you can move by yourself, you're alive. That was the idea that the ancients had. So, if you know, if you're alive, then, you know, like if a Aperon is alive in that sense, it is eternally alive, right? Because it's infinite. So, what do you have about the shape of the Earth? As I said, it is cylindrical, right? It's cylindrical like this. You have ocean surrounding it again, but this ocean is slowly drying out. So earlier it was all ocean, and because of the action of the sun, this ocean is drying out, and then more of this Earth is emerging from there. And interestingly, it is an Earth that is freely suspended in the middle of the cosmos, right? Freely suspended in like empty space. Now, how does that make sense? You know, how did Anaximander, or how is Anaximander said to have explained it? Basically, it's a spherical universe. Remember, it's a spheron. It's a spherical universe. In that spherical universe, in the middle, you have the Earth, right? A cylinder, you know, which is suspended in the middle of that spherical universe. How? Well, you know, Anaximander's explanation, in the most fascinating manner, is that why would it be more in one direction rather than the other? You know, and it's, if you think about it, it's an explanation that is based not on observation, because nobody, you know, who observes the universe would think, oh, we are on this circle on top of a cylinder suspended in the middle of nothingness. You know, it's strange. It's almost like a Frank Zappa kind of an idea, right? so you know, like suspended in the middle of nothingness. So because there is no reason for it to be more in one direction and less in another direction, right? It's like, because it would not be fair of it to be more in any direction, you know, up or down or left or right or wherever. That's why, you know, because of that indecisiveness, let's say, or because of fairness, you know, you can choose, it's suspended in the middle, right? That's the idea of the Earth suspended in the middle of the cosmos. Yeah. What do you have out there? And, you know, I'll try and make diagrams for this. You have the cold, moist mass in the middle, you know, which is separated out by the action of the hot and dry, you know, which, and then in the middle, you have that air and mist that arises from the action of the hot on the cold. You know, these two are fighting. And there is what you could think of it as a subproduct. That air or mist is a subproduct of the action of the hot, dry element, we could think of it as fire, on the cold, moist element. So the cold, moist had some kind of a, you know, so these two opposites, they're all four opposites, but the cold and moist made an alliance, and the hot and dry made an alliance. The hot, dry making an alliance became fire. The cold, moist making alliance became like earth and water, or mud, you know, combination of them. And this mist arose, this sub-element arose through the action of one on the other. So you can see how, you know, you start getting an idea, I hope, you have started getting an idea of how he imagines the cosmos to have arisen. You know, what is his cosmogony? So under the action of the heat on cold, wet, and dry in that sense, they become more completely separated, and they produce the land and the sea, right? So we have this from Diogenes, I think. Originally, all earth was wet, but as it dried up, the water that evaporated became the cause of winds and the turning of the sun and the moon, while what was left is the sea. They believe that the sea is still drying up and in the end would be all dried up, right? So this way, he's talking, it's a very secular, let's say, understanding of the creation of the cosmos. He's talking about retribution as well, it'll be all dried up, but there'll be retribution. And he's talking about the alternance of seasons, he's talking about, summer and spring and winter and autumn because things are alternating. And as we talked about also with the very cool vision of the rings of fire, the pipes from which fire is breathed out, we have the idea of the moon waxing and waning. So we have the idea of passages sort of opening, which means the moon is waxing, the passages closing, the moon is waning, right? And then he also had some mention, and this is mentioned, about the size of the sun, which is pretty interesting, right? So he said the size of the sun is 27 times that of the earth, right? The size of the moon is 18 times that of the earth. So here there is a bit of a, the moon is also supposed to be bigger, but why they're distant, And so this idea of this perspective that comes in, right? Why does the sun appear smaller than the earth then, if it is bigger? Why does the moon appear smaller if it is bigger? And the size of the stars is 9 times that of the earth. And the idea of the distance then as well. So you have, and I'll draw this diagram, I have this diagram here. So you have the earth in the middle, at the distance of whatever 9, I don't know what the measurement of distance is, 9 times the size of the earth, let's say. You have the mist, and you have the first level, interestingly, is the stars. That's why they're tiny and they open out, right? The next level is the moon, which is size 8, which is 18 times the distance, right? Or 19 times the distance and 18 times the size. And then like the outermost, you have the sun, which is 27 times, the size. So in fact, Anaximander, as far as we know, was the first to discuss the sizes of the different things that you can find, the sun and the star and the moon, and their distances, the idea of size, of distance. And he created a mechanical model of the earth. So we know that he wrote a book on, cosmology and on the map of the universe as well, not just on the map of the earth, which he did make. He drew a map of the earth, but he also made a map of the universe in which he made this kind of an idea, this sphere, this world was a sphere, in which he's talking about the distance and the size of planets, of stars, of the sun, the moon. So the sun, which is the highest, the moon, the middle, the stars, the planet, stars and planets, the lowest, and stars, planets distinction not very clearly there yet. And as we know very well, they all begin and end in apeiron. So to summarize, what do we have? We have the cold and the moist, on which there's an action of hot and dry, from which is created air and mist, which is in the middle. This dense mist has these holes like these pipes, right, from which fire is breathed out, while the wet and the dry is also getting dried up and slowly the earth is emerging. And then what you have is the sun, the moon, and the stars are these rotating wheels of fire. And you can think of them as rotating wheels because they also move around, right? The sun moves slightly faster, the sun and the moon. And then you have the stars as well that are slowly moving. And then you have these holes from which fire is streaming out. Like, think of it as an ignited jet of gas, or think of it as a dragon breathing out, whichever works for you, your imagination. So he has these sort of ideas of this, right? Anyway, so in the next video, I'll talk about his idea of animal and human life. So, as I said, cool cosmogony, but also cool sort of, idea of biology and origins. Thank you.